What makes this $1,000 tent worth more than these $500 and $600 tents? Well, the differences might surprise you and could make the difference between a safe and comfortable trip and one that you regret. So let's check it out. So it is winter in Colorado, and what better time is there to talk about 3-season tents versus 4-season tents and why you might want one over the other. So I've got 3 tents set up here. A 3-season tent, a 3+ season tent, and a 4-season expedition style tunnel tent. Most people watching this video are gonna be familiar with a tent like this. This is the MSR Hubba Hubba. It is your typical 3-season backpacking tent, which means it's good for spring, summer, and fall conditions. Now, does that mean that you can't take it out in the wintertime like I've got it here? Well, yes and no.
If all you're dealing with is cold temperatures, then 3-season tents can still work in the winter. There are 2 main reasons you wouldn't want this tent. One, because most 3-season tents are going to feel drafty in the winter. The fly on this tent doesn't go all the way to the ground to let more air flow through the tent, and there's a lot more mesh that is going to let air move around inside the tent. Moving air is the enemy of warmth. I mean, that's why we use fans to cool us off, right?
But if you're able to stop that airflow like on this tent that we'll talk about here in a minute, you're going to be a lot warmer. Now, you don't want to eliminate airflow, but you want to limit it more than most 3-season tents are capable of. Now, the Hubba Hubba does better than most because the mesh is mostly up at the top, which is going to limit that air movement. But there's a more important reason why this is a 3-season and not a 4-season tent, and that is the snow. The poles on these tents simply aren't strong enough to hold up under the weight of falling snow and strong winter winds. Now, if you saw my wind test video, then you know the Hubba Hubba actually stood up to 50-mile-per-hour winds before collapsing. But if you add the weight of snow on the fly and then the strong winter winds, it's simply not going to be enough to stand up to those conditions.
So if you want to do some winter camping, but you're not sure you need a full-on expensive expedition style tent, you could try something like the Copper Spur Expedition tent. Now, despite the fact that this has expedition in the name, it's not a true expedition tent. It's what Big Agnes is calling a 3+ season tent, and there are a couple reasons for that. First, if you look inside, it's got considerably less mesh to help limit airflow, but the main thing that helps this tent push a little bit further into the winter season is these poles are quite a bit stronger than your typical 3-season poles. They are larger in diameter, they have a thicker wall, and stronger hubs that allow this tent to hold up a little bit better under snow and wind loads.
But the one thing that keeps this from being a true 4-season tent is this cross beam right here. Even with the strength of these poles, if you get any significant snow load on top of this unsupported cross beam is simply not going to be strong enough to take the weight. That's the main thing that makes this a 3+ season tent and not a 4-season tent. Okay, all the tents I'm talking about today aren't cheap, but if you buy them through today's sponsor, you can get 10% off simply for being a viewer of this channel. Moose Jaw has been a long-term sponsor of this channel, and they sell everything you need to go winter camping, snowshoeing, skiing, and more.
They have one of the largest selections out there of any outdoor retailer. Some retailers just stock what they want to sell, but Moose Jaw has an extensive selection of outdoor gear no matter what you're into.
And if you use the code MLOMJ, you can get 10% off most things Moose Jaw sells, 5% off things that are already on sale. Some exclusions do apply. Go check them out at moosejaw.com or through the links in the description.
Now, if you want a true 4-season tent, take a look at this big mamma jamma, the Hilleberg Nalo GT2. First of all, this is a tunnel tent, which is a design that has been proven to perform really well in wind. This is the kind of tent you would take up above tree line in winter in deep snow and not worry about it. Now, on this particular tent, the poles are not any thicker than standard 3-season poles. This is actually their ultralight 4-season tent coming in at a feathery 7 pounds. More about that in a minute, but that means it's not the diameter of the poles that helps them stand up to the snow loads and high winds, it's the design of the tent.
Now you notice that this tent has a sleeve that runs the entire length of this pole. It then pops into this little peg here and tightens to make a circular shape. With this pole in that sleeve, if you apply weight to the top, it's got nowhere to go. It can't go out to the side because of the sleeve, and it can't go front to back because of the way this tent is staked out. That makes this tent extremely strong despite the smaller pole size. If you come inside, you'll notice that this tent has a really large vestibule. Now, this isn't completely necessary and does add quite a bit of weight to this tent, but it also serves as a space where you can get out of the wind and snowfall, take off your boots or other wet clothes before getting in the tent, tent. It also serves as a place where you can cook out of the wind and snowfall, but you should never cook inside of a fully enclosed vestibule. Inside this tent, you'll notice that there is hardly any mesh at all to keep drafts to a minimum. Now, you don't want zero air movement to help minimize freezing condensation, but you don't want so much that it's stealing all your heat. So you have a small little window in the back and a small little window up in the vestibule with a fly that goes all the way to the ground, so even in heavy winds, not much is getting in here. Now, do you need a tent like this to go camping in the wintertime? For most people, the answer is gonna be no. This is gonna be overkill. There are loads and loads of four-season tents that are not nearly this big, heavy, or expensive. Some of them are just made for one person, some of them don't have a vestibule, but almost all of them are designed to hold up under strong wind and heavy snow loads. Now, that's just the tents. There are lots of other things you need to do to stay warm before you ever set up a tent, and it's actually counterintuitive to what most people think. To find out the biggest mistake that's making you colder, go check out this video right here. Please like, subscribe, and do all those other things, and as always, thanks for watching. Now, the Hubba Hubba does better than most because there's an airplane flying overhead. That's not why it does better than most, but it's super annoying.